Today, we're looking at the most expensive mistakes in U.S. history. Decisions that changed America forever. In 2003, the United States invaded Iraq, claiming the country possessed weapons of mass destruction. Those weapons were never found. What followed was one of the most expensive wars in American history. The total cost is estimated at over $2 trillion when you include military spending, veterans' care, and long-term interest on debt. Beyond money, the war destabilized the region, damaged America's global reputation, and cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Many historians today call it the costliest foreign policy mistake the U.S. has ever made. The Vietnam War, a war America couldn't win. The Vietnam War lasted nearly 20 years and cost the United States around $1 trillion in today's money. Despite massive spending, advanced weapons, and hundreds of thousands of troops, the U.S. failed to achieve its goals. The war deeply divided the nation, sparked massive protests, and left lasting scars on American society. In the end, America withdrew, proving that money and military power don't guarantee victory. The 2008 financial crisis, $22 trillion, lost. In 2008, the U.S. financial system collapsed due to risky banking practices, weak regulation, and unchecked greed. The result? A global recession. Americans lost homes, jobs, and savings. The stock market crashed, and the total economic damage is estimated at over $22 trillion. It wasn't caused by a war or an enemy, but by decisions made inside boardrooms and government offices. Prohibition, when America banned alcohol. In 1920, the U.S. government made alcohol illegal nationwide. The goal was to reduce crime and improve public morality. The result was the opposite. Prohibition led to the rise of organized crime, bootlegging, corruption, and violent gangs. The government lost billions in tax revenue and spent huge sums trying to enforce an unworkable law. After 13 chaotic years, Prohibition was repealed, officially admitting one of the most embarrassing policy failures in U.S. history. The Space Shuttle program. Ambition at a high cost. The Space Shuttle was meant to make space travel cheaper and safer. Instead, it became incredibly expensive. The program cost over $200 billion, suffered 2 tragic disasters, and never achieved its original goals. While it advanced science, many experts believe the money could have been spent far more efficiently elsewhere. Hurricane Katrina, the cost of government failure. When Hurricane Katrina hit in 2005, the damage wasn't just caused by nature. Slow response, poor planning, and mismanagement turned a disaster into a national tragedy. The total cost exceeded $160 billion. But the real damage was the loss of trust in government institutions. For many Americans, Katrina became a symbol of what happens when leadership fails. The Afghanistan War, $2.3 trillion and 20 years. The war in Afghanistan became the longest war in U.S. history. What began as a mission to defeat terrorism turned into a 20-year conflict with no clear victory. The total cost exceeded $2.3 trillion. When U.S. forces finally withdrew in 2021, the Taliban quickly returned to power, raising serious questions about whether 2 decades of spending achieved anything lasting. The Louisiana Purchase, a mistake that almost wasn't. In 1803, the U.S. spent $15 million to buy the Louisiana Territory from France. At the time, many Americans called it reckless and unconstitutional. The country nearly doubled in size overnight. Ironically, what was seen as a massive financial risk became one of the best deals in history, proving that even mistakes can sometimes pay off. The Manhattan Project, victory at an unthinkable cost. The Manhattan Project cost around $2 billion at the time, over $30 billion today. It ended World War II but introduced nuclear weapons to the world. The long-term cost, an arms race, global fear, and decades of nuclear tension. Many still debate whether this decision saved lives or endangered humanity forever. The healthcare system, a $1 trillion problem. Every year, unlike other developed nations, the U.S. never created a universal healthcare system. The result? Americans pay far more per person for healthcare than any other country. Over $4 trillion annually. Experts argue that decades of political gridlock have cost the U.S. tens of trillions in avoidable expenses.
Gentlemen,
Ignoring climate change, a bill that keeps growing. For decades, scientists warned about climate change. The warnings were ignored. Today, the U.S. spends hundreds of billions every year on natural disasters, wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Economists estimate the long-term cost could reach trillions of dollars, making inaction one of the most expensive mistakes ever. The gold standard exit, economic shockwaves. When the U.S. abandoned the gold standard in 1971, it gained flexibility, but also uncertainty. The decision triggered inflation, currency instability, and decades of economic debate. Some economists argue it saved the economy. Others say it planted the seeds for massive debt and future crises. The COVID-19 response. Trillions spent under pressure, massive stimulus packages, emergency programs, and rushed decisions pushed federal spending to unprecedented levels. In total, the response cost over $5 trillion. While much of the spending was necessary, critics argue that poor coordination, fraud, and delayed action made the crisis far more expensive than it needed to be. The economic shock will be felt for decades. The Big Dig, America's most expensive highway project. In Boston, the Big Dig was supposed to be a simple infrastructure upgrade. Instead, it became one of the most notorious public works disasters in U.S. history. Originally estimated at $2.8 billion, the final cost exceeded $14 billion. Delays, corruption, engineering flaws, and even fatalities turned the project into a symbol of government waste. America's history is filled with bold moves. Some built empires. Others destroyed trust, money, and lives. The line between genius and disaster is often thin and incredibly expensive.